Hello and welcome to this YouTube video which is about the Nimzo Indian defense. Today we're going to cover the Nimzo Indian defense from Black's point of view. So when White plays d4, Black would, in the Nimzo Indian defense, play knight f6, which prevents White from playing e4 and have their pieces in the center. White responds by playing c4. And their next move, and White's plan now, is to play knight c3 and then play e4. But when White plays knight c, But to prevent knight c3, we play e6. And then when White plays knight c3 now, then bishop goes to b4 to pin the knight. So when they play e4, we can take it because the knight is pinned to the king. White usually would respond either with a3, in which case we would take the knight, and then they would take back with the b-pawn. As you can see, White's pawn structure isn't very good, and it would need some, and it's not so good, so Black can take advantage of it. So to prevent this from happening, some players play bishop to d2, in which case when we take on c3, they take with the bishop, not the pawn. So although the bishop is defending the knight, usually Black would take the knight because it's still a threat to playing e4 now, which we don't want to happen. We don't want White to develop their pawns into the center. So we must take, and then they would take with the bishop on c3. After that, Black would respond by castling, and then for the next few moves, both sides would do normal developing. So knight would play to f3. Black would usually play b6 to develop their bishop on the fianchetto on b7 to have a super long diagonal on f3 to attack the knight and potentially cause some trouble. So b6, White carries on with their developing, and then e3, then to develop their bishop and eventually castle. So while this happens, Black would play bishop d7, put their bishop on the fianchetto, and develop the rest of their pieces now. White would normally play bishop to d3, developing their bishop, and Black would play d6 to put their knight on b8 and develop it to d7. White would usually castle now, and knight would go to d7. Now we reach a crucial position where in the next 2 moves, Black needs to do something because they finished the developing, so now they need to attack. Well, conveniently enough, we now can attack because there's a sneaky move we can do. That's knight e4, a very bold move that is a very powerful knight and controls the center. black would also have lots of space and would eventually have lots of space to attack the king, as I will show you in the video. So now white would play queen d2, bring their queen on a nice square to connect the rooks, and now black plays knight e4. White doesn't usually take because they would either move their bishop on c3 because it's attacked, and when they capture the bishop on c3, they get doubled pawns, which originally, as I explained before, wouldn't be very good for white's pawn structure. So they would usually move the bishop instead of capture the knight, because capturing the knight, you sacrifice a bishop, which in this kind of position is better than a knight. So black would usually try and defend their bishop in some kind of way. So queen c2 is a variation to defend the bishop on c3. Also, at the same time, attacking the knight even more times, so twice now, and we only got one defense, the bishop. So black needs to defend the knight one more time for it to not be captured. So that is why we play f5 to defend the knight and to support the knight and give black lots of space to attack, as you can see in the area here. So, because what happens when bishop takes and then bishop takes, now the queen is attacked and has to move, and it's defended by the pawn on f5. So after f5, white would usually develop the rooks. So rook e1, and while this is happening, black would also develop, but they would start to attack. So now black would play rook f6. I know this might be a very bad move, a beginner move, but our plan is to put the rook on h6 or g6 to put pressure on the pawns that defend the king. So after rook f6, white would usually develop the other rook to d1. Now, carrying on with our plan, we would play rook h6. After this, we now give space on f6, so you can play queen f6 and then queen g6, or maybe even in the future play queen h5, possibly. So after rook h6, white would need to get rid of that knight somehow. So some players, they play knight to d2. And I think now it's pretty much the end for the knight on e4. So black would usually take on c3, because the next move, white would take the knight on e4 anyway. So instead they just take the bishop and then the queen takes. And now it's time for attack. So queen h4, straight move, threaten checkmate. Obviously black, now as you can see, black is pressing on white. They they are attacking white's king from all directions, from the bishop on b7 to the rook on h6, the queen on h4, and there are no white pieces that are close to the king, so the king isn't really protected that much except by its pawns, which gives black an advantage, and now the game would pretty much close to an end in the next 10 or so moves. So that's my video for the Nimzo Indian. Hope you enjoyed it, and